murder, he worked undercover in my bar and ended up under the covers on my bed. He discovered my disorder could be useful in helping him solve crimes, and he dragged me into a few cases. I resisted at first because my synesthesia was something I felt a need to hide. It embarrassed me and made me feel like a freak. But when Duncan showed me how I could use it to do something good, my attitude began to change. I opened up my mind to the idea of my synesthesia being something both helpful and useful, and I opened up my heart to Duncan. Neither change came easily. It seemed the general public and Duncan's bosses weren't as open-minded about my synesthesia as Duncan was. When the local press got wind of my involvement in a high-profile case involving a missing child, news pieces about how the local police were using witchcraft, ESP, and voodoo hit the papers and the airwaves. This didn't go over well with the brass at the Milwaukee Police Department, and Duncan ended up getting suspended. We spent some time apart, hoping the furor would die down, but it didn't. If anything, it got worse. My life was turned upside down to the point that it became the antithesis of that dull, predictable life I'd had while growing up. This was due in part to other deaths associated with my bar. One of those deaths was that of my bouncer and fill-in bartender, Gary Gunderson, who was murdered just 2 days ago. And, in a way, it was my fault. I was being stalked, taunted, and tormented by a diabolical killer. This person kept sending me letters with puzzles I had to figure out by a deadline in order to prevent the death of someone I knew. And just in case I doubted the veracity of that claim, the writer killed one of my customers, Lewis Carmichael, a nurse who worked at a nearby hospital. Lewis was not only a customer but also a member of the Capone Club, a group of crime solvers from a variety of backgrounds who came to my bar on a regular basis. The first couple of letters that arrived after Lewis's death I managed to interpret and solve in time, but I stumbled over the last one. My initial interpretation was wrong, and by the time I figured out what it was supposed to be, it was too late. Gary died because of my mistake. On the heels of Gary's death, my fear and frustration with the letter writer morphed into a white-hot anger. I became mad as hell and determined to find the person behind it all. I wasn't alone in my efforts, because I had the help of some of the members of the Capone Club. A handful of them, those I was closest to, those I considered my family now that I had none of my own, knew about the letter writer. Cora Kingsley, a 40-something red-headed manhunter and computer geek, was like a sister to me. Her skills with computers had proved invaluable, both in interpreting the clues and in logging my synesthetic reactions so I could better use and understand them. And Joe and Frank Signoriello, two retired 70-something brothers who were ex-insurance salesmen, were also in the loop. These two men have known me my entire life, and when my father died, they took on the role of advisors, becoming the closest thing to family I had. These three people and Duncan knew about the letter writer. The others in the Capone Club did not. And this created a dilemma for me, since the letter writer had said the victims would be among those I knew. The deaths thus far had proven the truth of this claim, and every hour I debated the wisdom of keeping the others in the dark. But I was afraid that if the news got out about the letters, the writer might seek revenge by going on a killing spree. While the letter writer hadn't specifically said I couldn't use the Capone Club to help me solve the puzzles, I was wary of pushing that envelope, and the instructions did make it clear that I wasn't allowed to use the help of any cops, with Duncan getting specific mention. This made my decision not to inform the club members about the letter writer a little easier, since some of the local cops participated. Thus far, I'd managed to skirt the no-cops edict by keeping Duncan involved on the sly while making it appear as if the two of us were on the outs. This facade was made easier by the fact that I was pretending to date someone else, a fellow named Mal O'Reilly, who happened to be both an undercover cop and a friend of Duncan's. I allowed the cops who participated in the Capone Club to help us solve other crimes we were working on, but I kept the letter writer to myself and took care not to involve them in any part of that investigation. It was a thin...